I'm going to give a sort of a quick overview of some things that kind of came out during the course of the day, some themes that we heard. We began with our first panel looking at a collective change in an era of values and how we assign those values, an era where the role of design that can be, quote, park positive. And then we began a series of either ors or A and B together. I don't know if that's a Canadian thing. But we heard things, for example, historically. Brendan spoke of the need to have versus urgent, which I thought was really interesting because there's a number of current debates that are swelling around such a dichotomy, or perhaps a false dichotomy. We then heard about cultural narratives and embedded values from Jane. We heard about forces we don't control and forces we do control. We heard a lot about bluffs, no ands-ifs or bluffs you could say today in islands. We heard about persistence and perseverance. We heard about vision from Jen and Paul versus the day-to-day happens. And I got really excited when both Jen and Paul talked about enhancing and protecting and redesigning and rejuvenation or rejuvenating. And those were things that, for me, as a person who comes from both camps in design and historic preservation and multiple values, that was kind of musical for me. We also heard such quotes as, "It takes longer to get an 8-story building built than a 6-story tower," which I guess was some good food for thought right before lunch. We spent our money suggesting that our streets are just roads, not places, and then we had this conversation of roads versus places. And from Jen, my favorite, other than the sort of elephant in the room, my favorite moment of the day was when she said places to get through versus places to be, another way to think about modernism. Then we went on after lunch from Cloud to hear, of course, that he is the illegitimate love child of Frederick Law Olmsted and Martha Schwartz. But we also heard about not being subordinated, but being situated. And then we heard about 2 Torontos, 3 Torontos, 4 Torontos. Can I hear 5 Torontos? We heard about the inner Toronto, the outer Toronto. And then we concluded the afternoon panel discussion with Liz saying, faith in the landscape that will bring everything else along, hence the theme of leading with landscape. Bruce opened by talking about the compelling fiction of leading with landscape. Jeff Cape talked about transforming the next generation's values around landscape and building the narrative, which was, of course, a central theme that closed the panel with Thomas Woltz, who made 2 statements that were also, for me, really why I enjoy spending so much time with you and how you push me to be a better proselytizer and a person to promote ideas. The first was, we have to get smarter as a profession about speaking about numbers, because I really do think that all of us need to live on both sides of our brain, and we don't do enough of that. And then finally, Thomas said, design can be in service to ecology, especially at a massive scale. So now, having said that, also coming on the eve of our board meeting, which was yesterday for those of us that were here for our communication strategy, where we talked about our new messaging at the foundation, which is basically make visible, instill value, engage. That's what this day has been about. It's been about making these multiple systems and values visible. And I think our speakers have really stepped up for that. What I want to talk about is a little bit more about engagement. We learned from Claude today that a healthy pike can swallow a duck in a half second, which I know that will change the way I look at things forever. So thank you for that, Claude. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that was Adrian, excuse me. And then Adrian also said, he spoke to leadership. And he also spoke to leadership today in the renaissance of the city. Now, while we were all here today flexing our brains, the city's planning director did something that was pretty brave. And I'm not sure how many people know, but there was a whole Twitter storm going on today after our panel discussion. Oliver Moore, who was here with us today, at 12:53 posted the following headline: Toronto Chief Planner opposes Mayor, seeks Easton Gardner removal. That's pretty seismic to happen here today. And so now what I'd like to ask everyone in the room is all of those landscape architects that raise their hands, that are from here, what are you going to do about it? Now, thank you. I had the good fortune of knowing Larry Halpern, Steve Cook, who I think is still here somewhere in the room, who worked with Larry and did many of the working drawings for the FDR Memorial. I remember visiting the Embarcadero with Larry before we had the event on October 17th, 1989, when the Loma Prieta earthquake happened and the Embarcadero came down. A fountain that he had designed in relation to it, its context was forever changed, and Larry was giddy that the kaleidoscope of life would reclaim the street. I'm also, as I confessed earlier, a native New Yorker who lived on the Upper West Side when the whole Westway conversation was going on. And again, with Thomas and his quest for numbers today, the numbers speak volumes. We have 550 acres of Hudson Park because we didn't get that project. Now, if we're going to lead with landscape, if landscape architects are going to support visionary leaders who are in fact leaders, we start immediately. When we leave here today, we become engaged. We write letters, we tell our friends, we tweet, we do all of these things. This is a seminal moment about civic life and about how we will engage at a street level. It is about economics. These are not either ors, these are win-wins. And the landscape architects here today, I hope, will become proselytizers, they will become broadcasters, and they will do this in the same way that when you go to a place like Seattle, Pike Market stands today because of Rich Haig and Lori Olin. It is part of our heritage as landscape architects, and I say to all of you, thank you for coming, go forth, and let's make a difference.